You most likely had a relative who said Julie Andrews could never fail or hummed Doremi while you were a kid. Allow me to explain. All those whirling hills and flawless smiles hide a harrowing assortment of hidden truths. And by weird, I mean really strange. In this video, we'll explore 20 strange things about music that you probably didn't know. The facts we're going to reveal are getting more juicy by the second, so you shouldn't even consider clicking away. Believe me when I say that the first fact is worth your time. 20. In the prologue, Julie Andrews kept tripping and falling. As shown on TV, Julie Andrews' famous opening shot of twirling happily across an alpine meadow looks effortless. However, a whole different narrative emerges from the truth behind this renowned sequence. Surprisingly, this iconic opening scene was shot in Austria towards the end of filming. For the shot, Andrews had to stand at one end of the pitch as a cameraman in a helicopter came up from the other. With a loud hailer, a crew member concealed in the surrounding bushes yelled out, "Go, Julie," in order to precisely timing her movements. At the start of each walk, Andrews would whirl around as if to sing. The jet engines of the chopper created a tremendous downdraft that would knock Andrews to the ground after every take. There were 6 or 9 instances like this, not just 1 or 2. She had to pick herself up after every tumble, vomit out any debris, remove her clothing, and then get back to the beginning for another go. It is especially noticeable how the filming conditions were chaotic in comparison to the peaceful, elegant image that people love. Behind the scenes, Andrews was flattened multiple times and became more and more irritated as viewers witnessed a carefree woman dancing across a high meadow. Her story goes like this. She got so angry at the pilot that she shook her fist at him, asking him to round her with a larger circle. Adding to the surreal nature of the video, the cameraman's location caused the helicopter to approach crabwise, sideways like a grasshopper. Extremely loud speakers concealed under trees were needed to make the musical replay heard above the helicopter boom. These problems were made worse by the tough weather. Due to the fact that Austria has the 7th highest yearly rainfall on Earth, studios officials summoned the ensemble back to Los Angeles at this point in the filming, since the film was 3 weeks behind schedule and significantly over budget. What if we revealed that a pivotal sequence from the musical The Sound of Music was completely unplanned? The fact that it made the cut despite being an accident is true. To see which one, continue watching. Number 19. The actual Von Trapp family fled over the Alps in a train. In the film's dramatic climax, the Von Trapp family takes flight from Nazi-occupied Austria and makes a daring escape to Switzerland across the Alps. This famous scene, however, has almost nothing in common with the actual events of the past. The Von Trapps actually just got on a train and departed Austria during the middle of the day. We did announce our plans to perform in the United States. Furthermore, we did not traverse treacherous mountain ranges laden with cumbersome instruments and bags. We hopped on a train and pretended we weren't involved, Maria's daughter said in an interview from 2003. Joined by Reverend Franz Wasner, the family's musical conductor, and Secretary Martha Zachbauer, they went. Substituting for the real Max Detweiler in the film were various characters. Because George was born in a territory that became part of Italy in 1920, granting him Italian citizenship, their primary destination was Italy rather than Switzerland. Surprisingly, the family left Austria the very day before the borders were sealed. Had the Von Trapp family had tried to traverse the mountains as shown in the movie, they would have ended up in Nazi Germany instead of neutral Switzerland, where it lay around 200 miles distant. The original Maria Von Trapp made fun of this geographical gaffe by saying, "Don't they know geography in Hollywood? There is no boundary between Salzburg and Switzerland." The most iconic scene in the film takes place in an impossible location. Beyond that, there is a striking difference between the family's actual departure during the day and the dramatic nighttime escape. Where they traveled freely, their intent's clearly visible. Number 18. For $9,000, the Von Trapps could sell the rights to their narrative. A stunning financial blunder committed by the actual Von Trapp family, which cost them millions in potential earnings in the decades that followed, lays behind the enormous popularity of The Sound of Music. Following George's passing in 1955, Maria Von Trapp ran into financial troubles and sold the rights to her 1949 biography, The Story of Trapp Family Singers, to Wolfgang Reinhardt, a German film producer, for a pitiful $9,000. No royalty provisions were included in this flat fee arrangement, It encompassed all rights to the film and theatrical adaptation. After this sale, Maria unwittingly gave up all creative control over her family's life story. Both the Broadway musical and the Hollywood film that would immortalize the Von Trapp family had very little influence from the Von Trapp family, since the American rights were later bought from the German producers. Christopher Plummer was inebriated during Edelweiss, which brings us to number 17. Christopher Plummer's shocking confession is the driving force for his moving performance of Edelweiss, which continues to captivate audiences. As the final music festival scene was being filmed, he was visibly inebriated. While filming the critical music festival scene where the Von Trapp family plays before their daring escape, Plummer confessed in the 35th anniversary DVD commentary that he was completely intoxicated. In Nazi-occupied Austria, the actor sought solace in booze as he became clearly anxious before performing with a full orchestra. My body trembled. On my first attempt, I was utterly intimidated by a full orchestra. I would have passed out, Plummer admitted. Julie had to support me. In the midst of what would turn out to be one of the most moving scenes in the film, Andrews physically held her drunk co-star. Another striking difference between Plummer's sober self and his professional history as a trained Shakespearean actor with a resume full of leading roles is his level of intoxication. Famously, Plummer later stated, "I was a spoilt, haughty, young bastard spoilt by too many great theater roles," and he characterized his actions as unethical. Even before this scene, he had been drinking. In retrospect, he saw that I was inebriated when it happened. The scenario may have had a greater emotional impact due to Plummer's inebriation, which is somewhat surprising. Both the made-up festival-goers and millions of moviegoers across the world were enchanted by his genuine emotion and sensitivity when he performed Edelweiss. Hidden among those musical hills were a plethora of bizarre secrets, amusing blunders, and information you've likely never heard of. To find out which one is the most shocking, you'll have to watch till the very end. Number 16. The real Maria Von Trapp appeared in a minor part. In an unprecedented turn of events in film history, the real Maria Von Trapp sneaks in an uncredited cameo during Julie Andrews' rendition of "I Have Confidence," a scene that many viewers fail to notice, even though it was inspired by her own life story. In the distance, as Andrews marches through Salzburg on his approach to the Von Trapp house, the actual Maria can be seen passing an archway. Faintly, you might not notice it. When Andrews says, "I must stop these doubts, all these worries," that's when it all comes together. I am certain that I will go back if I do not. The real Maria had companions. Rosemary, her daughter, and Barbara, the daughter of Werner Von Trapp, accompanied her. When these three women briefly pop up on screen, it's against what seems like a city center, which is behind Andrews. Intriguingly, despite the producers giving Maria this special appearance, they didn't invite her to the premiere of the film. The producers merely informed Maria that there were no more tickets available when she asked why she had not received an invitation. Considering the considerate gesture of including her appearance, this rejection was seen by many as shockingly rude. In addition, Andrews' depiction of Maria was very different from the real one. Viewers of Maria on shows like Dinah Shore's noticed that she was a fierce force in real life, in stark contrast to the film's amiable Bryn Mawr. The 15th Von Trapp nearly drowned. For decades, viewers were kept in the dark about a horrific occurrence that happened during the seemingly harmless boating scene with the Von Trapp children. Little Gretel, played by 5-year-old Kim Caruth, was almost killed in a terrible accident. It all happened as they were filming the scene where Maria is rowing the kids across the lake. The family rises to their feet and salutes Captain Von Trapp as it is written in the script, leading to the vessel's capsize. The assistant director shockingly approached Julie Andrews with distressing news only seconds before filming began. "We can't let the tiny one swim." For reasons that should be obvious, Andrews was taken aback and asked, "What?" The entire first take went off without a hitch. However, catastrophe befell the moment the second take commenced. Unpredictably violent rocking sent Andrews over the bow as young Kim plummeted over the bow and into the deep ocean. She was just a kindergartner when the actress found herself underwater and fought for her life. To begin, it is shockingly irresponsible that the crew did not follow any safety procedures when filming a water scene with youngsters who cannot swim. Strangest of all, no one told Andrews that Kim couldn't swim until only seconds before the cameras started rolling, so she missed her chance to object or ask for further precautions. The decision was so careless by today's filmmaking standards, especially considering that the scene might have been shot in shallow water or with safety divers. Worryingly, Kim's irrational fear of water persisted into adulthood, a clear sign of the long-term psychological harm caused by this horrific event. Liesel hurt her ankle dancing on number 14. Charmy and Carr suffered a terrible injury during the romantic dance sequence in 16 going on 17, one of the film's most renowned musical numbers, but nobody noticed since they were captivated by the performance. Liesel and Rolf's dance scene at the gazebo was really the final scene shot for the film. On her first try, Charmy and Carr, a young woman of 21 years old, tried to jump across the polished wooden benches that line the inside of the glass gazebo. She had almost no grip in her dance shoes since the costume department had neglected to equip them with rubber soles. She took her initial jump, but she slipped horribly, sending her tumbling through the glass pane of the gazebo. The actress suffered a sprained ankle and shards flew as a result of the collision. One peculiarity of this incident is that there are many copies of the film, each displaying varying degrees of injury visible. You can see Carr's bandaged ankle in a few photos from the first edition, making a continuity mistake that goes unnoticed by the majority of viewers. This evidence was meticulously removed from the remastered versions, nevertheless. Furthermore, the dancing sequence did not take place in the gazebo that was later donated to Salzburg but was used for outside shoots. The complex dance routines couldn't be staged in the small space, so the producers had to construct a bigger set in their Hollywood studio. Instead of delaying filming, a medic on set swiftly shot Carr in the back and wrapped his damaged ankle in a large bandage. Careful observers can still detect that her right ankle appears much thicker than her left throughout the sequence, even though the wardrobe staff attached stockings to her suit to mask the swelling. Carr, astonishingly, persisted in going even though she was injured, and she flawlessly executed all of the remaining dance movements. The whole team gave her an unexpected standing ovation as filming wrapped because of her professionalism and perseverance. 13. Filming the Doremi sequence took a total of 2 months. As much perseverance and patience as was required for the legendary Doremi montage in The Sound of Music was unparalleled in cinematic history. Unexpectedly, this joyful musical number turned into a production nightmare, taking an unprecedented 2 months to finish. The prolonged shooting schedule was mainly caused by the unpredictable weather in Austria. The crew had to fight off relentless downpours in an area that gets some of the heaviest yearly rainfall in Europe. No filming could take place due to the unpredictable downpours, freezing spring temperatures, and constant cloud cover. Because of these weather restrictions, we had to shoot the picnic scene in the meadow for 5 entire days. Because the sequence needed coordinating filming over 9 different Salzburg locations, logistics were even more problematic. Julie Andrews would occasionally ride an ox cart to outlying filming locations as part of the production crew's daily equipment and people transport needs. Furthermore, the kids had to put in a lot of time in rehearsals at Fox Studios riding bikes down streets in time with the music before they could go to Austria Andrews. It is actually astonishing how different the reality is from what you see on screen. Despite the sunny, happy montages shown to the public, the actual filming conditions were often quite bad. Between takes, it was common to see cast members, especially the kids, huddling under blankets, attempting to keep warm. It was kind of cold and rainy, and I don't believe anybody anticipated that, according to Kim Carruth's memory. Practical issues, in addition to the weather, put everyone's endurance to the test. The crew and actors endured harsh, undeveloped environments at faraway filming sites. There were no restrooms for miles. There were also increasing technical difficulties. Lights and generators had to be imported from all around Europe due to the serious equipment deficit that developed for the nighttime and special effects scenes. Despite the film's seemingly innocent and charming exterior, there were some very strange and unexpected happenings behind the scenes. During that iconic Alpine scene, something absolutely unbelievable happened. Listen up for number 11. Number 12. Although he exuded an air of authority, Captain Von Trapp's singing voice was dubbed. Even after the film's debut, most people didn't realize that Christopher Plummer's iconic singing roles in The Sound of Music weren't actually his voice. Bill Lee, a renowned session singer who is sometimes referred to as the singing voice of Hollywood, dubbed all of Plummer's vocals. Throughout his career, Lee had dubbed for a large number of actors who did not sing. His resume was broad. A compelling illusion was created when his voice blended in flawlessly with Plummer's speaking voice, fooling millions of spectators. This was a common occurrence during the process. The singing vocals of a number of other characters were either augmented or replaced totally. Marjorie McKay also dubbed Peggy Wood's dramatic interpretation of Climb Every Mountain, which she used to portray Mother Abbess. Plummer was really a trained vocalist with a lot of talent, which makes this dubbing all the more bizarre. Plummer had a passable singing voice, which is a rarity among performers who have to rely on dubbing because they can't play an instrument. It seems that his only complaint was that the characters assigned songs were too emotional for him. He was perhaps reluctant to participate vocally because of his general dislike of the film, which he frequently called The Sound of Mucus. As a result, Plummer's role needed a voice replacement, although Julie Andrews did an outstanding job with her own songs. Number 11. George was first unloved by Maria. Maria and George Von Trapp's real-life romance was far from a whimsical fairy tale, in contrast to the film's depiction of their instant attraction. This striking difference between the real story and the Hollywood rendition of The Sound of Music unveils an additional intriguing dimension to the original narrative. Maria wrote in her book that she wed the captain without any romantic feelings. She later admitted in interviews that she was not in love with him. Rather than seeing their marriage as a romantic partnership, Maria saw it as a religious obligation. She remembered being confused and conflicted when the captain proposed. At first, she rejected him. Talking it over with her mom, the abbess, she finally decided to marry him. He persuaded her that marrying the captain and becoming a mother to his children was God's will. The real relationship started off as more of a business deal, which is at odds with the film's depiction of secret feelings of desire and longing looks. It is interesting to note that Maria initially came to the Von Trapp home to help out a single youngster named Maria who was afflicted with scarlet fever, not in the role of governess for each of the seven. The movie's intense romance stands in sharp contrast to Maria's honest confession that she liked him but didn't love him. This contrast is intriguing. Maria went so far as to say that she had been horrible to the captain at first, completely ignoring the timid admiration that was shown on TV. 10. The strict one was the actual Maria. One of the most shocking elements of the film version of their narrative is the total inversion of Maria and George Von Trapp's personalities. Maria Von Trapp, shown by Julie Andrews with such warmth and kindness, was actually a fierce disciplinarian who had absolute power over her family. As a result, she walked the 10 kids closely while holding their leashes, and often displayed a temperament that was unpredictable. Members of her family recalled that she would have violent tantrums when she would bang doors, throw objects, and yell. These occurrences were reported in great detail by Maria's stepdaughter. She was quite irritable. You were completely unaware of what had struck her from one second to the next. The kids from Von Trapp didn't grow up with their mother's explosive behavior, but they learned to ride out her emotional storms since they knew their mom's humor would be back in no time. The fact that the on-screen Captain Von Trapp was an icy dictator who blew the whistle is the most perplexing part. In contrast, George was a kind and generous parent who took pleasure in musical outings with his loved ones. The film's depiction of him was so inaccurate that it caused his children great emotional grief. Theobald Von Trapp. Each youngster was expected to learn music individually, and daily practices went from 10 to 12 and 4 to 6, reflecting on their intense musical training. Maria, not Georg, was undoubtedly the driving force behind this intensity. That brings us to number 9. Love Song was the working title. The legendary musical almost made its cinematic debut under an entirely different title, but few fans are aware of this. The masterwork by Rodgers and Hammerstein nearly had a whole other identity before it became a household term. Love Song was the original title that the makers of this popular musical intended to use. This working title was used during the early stages of development for both the Broadway production and the following film. Initial drafts, production notes, and pre-production materials all bore the moniker Love Song. The romantic undertones that Rodgers and Hammerstein felt were adequately conveyed by this title were present throughout their production of Maria Von Trapp's autobiography. Surprisingly, the original title had little to do with the musical's core themes: music, patriotism, and family. Neither the Austrian backdrop nor the extraordinary trip of the Von Trapp family are conveyed in Love Song. Compared to the unique title we now know, Love Song's bland nature sounds shockingly unimaginative. Considering the founders' well-known inventiveness, their first selection is unexpectedly commercially conventional and dull. With its new title, the story's musical core is more effectively conveyed, as is the narrative-altering power of music. An unintentionally brilliant branding choice that surely added to the film's long-lasting popularity. Plummer, Julie Andrews, and number 8 couldn't help but burst into laughter. The main actors in the film couldn't help but burst into laughter, almost ruining one of the most romantic scenes in Hollywood history. While filming the touching love scene in the gazebo, Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer encountered an unforeseen obstacle. On multiple occasions when filming the personal ballad Something Good, Andrews and Plummer couldn't help but burst into uncontrollable laughter. It seemed like every time the director gave the signal, the actors would break character just moments after starting their amorous sequence. Engulfed with laughter, neither actor could keep their cool as this went on for take after take. The source of their unrestrained laughter, an odd technical glitch, led to a humiliating circumstance. For the nighttime gazebo scenario, the strong arc lights made weird, unsuitable noises. The lights made noises that sounded like body parts when the players tried to make passionate eye contact, completely ruining the romantic mood. The production crew finally got it right by filming the sequence in silhouette after multiple failed attempts. The usage of front-facing lights, which was producing the annoying noises, was rendered unnecessary by this ingenious approach. This scene is one of the most visually stunning in the film, and the use of silhouettes helped to intensify the intimate atmosphere. 7th number. An emergency broadcast list for the Cold War included the film. The Sound of Music had an unusual role in Cold War history beyond its musical success. It could have provided solace in the event of a nuclear holocaust. There was a higher calling for this cherished film than just providing amusement. A unique programming schedule was painstakingly developed for a nuclear emergency by the BBC throughout the Cold War. This backup plan included The Sound of Music as its first item, chosen for broadcasting during the 4-minute warning sirens. With thousands of people likely confined to their homes or shelters in the aftermath of a nuclear attack, this meticulously planned emergency programming sought to raise morale. The Broadway production was universally reviled by critics. Many fans are unaware that the original 1959 Broadway performance was heavily criticized by theater critics who deemed it as cheesy and out of touch, despite the fact that audiences throughout the world loved the music. Reviewers were quite critical of the theatrical musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein. Later on, Bosley Crowther of the New York Times panned the film, calling it cozy cum corny and including some really terrible adult characters. An unnamed critic for Time magazine said it has too much sugar and not enough spice. Pauline Kael may have provided the most harsh criticism when she said that music is the biggest limiting factor on creative freedom in film, and that people seem to want to ingest a sugar-coated falsehood. She apparently lost her job at McCall's magazine because of her vicious critique. The Rodgers and Hammerstein Cathedral was effectively TP'd by these bitter skeptics, who gave evaluations that ranged from neutral to malicious. What skeptics thought was outmoded ended up moving people's hearts, both those who had fond family recollections and those who wished they had. Believe you have a good ear for music? Imagine if we revealed that Maria's presence atop that pine cone belies a hidden truth. Is going to shock you. Yes. Please hold off until the 4th information is known. The 5th one. No, Edelweiss is not the national song of Austria. The widespread idea that Edelweiss symbolizes Austria's national anthem is perhaps the most egregious example of a musical misnomer. Despite its humble origins, this lovely melody has become culturally significant due to the strong feelings it generates throughout the film. Edelweiss is widely believed by viewers around the world to have centuries-old, genuine Austrian roots. Quite astonishingly, this misunderstanding gets to the very top. Astounded by the Austrian delegates in attendance, the song was once played at a White House banquet honoring the Austrian president. Locals in Salzburg still get asked about this classic folk song by tourists that visit the city. The 4th is the subliminal hint. During dinner, the kids in the song pull a practical joke on Maria by having her sit on a pine cone while she crinkles up in pain. However, there is a tiny hint of sexual overtones in the scenario that many people find off-putting. Particularly in this depiction, sitting on a pointy pine cone suggests unease in an intimate location. Adults notice the awkward suggestion, while children see mischief. It's a clean-hearted classic with a surprisingly racy humor. Plus, it's impossible to look away once you've caught it. An unexpectedly mature spin on a classic, blink and you'll miss it moment. The third point is that Uncle Max was gay. It's the kind of realization that may slip your mind in an instant. The Sound of Music's Uncle Max was gay. What you believe to be true about his character is completely altered by that. He appeared to be the lively, eccentric uncle with a musical talent when I was a kid. Looking at it through a historical perspective, nevertheless, changes the impact for an adult. In Nazi-ruled Austria in the 1930s, he would have been a prime target due to his dual identities as a gay Jewish guy who is secretly gay. Extra bonus, he assists the Von Trapps in escaping. His once jovial remarks now have serious undertones. Not only was Uncle Max lovely, but he was also courageous. Second, Nicholas Hammond experienced an acting growth spurt. The uncommon continuity problem that challenged the visual believability was caused by one young actor's quick physical development, which was one of many production challenges encountered during filming. In the order of the Von Trapp family tree, the 6 months that it took to film the role of 14-year-old Friedrich von Trapp saw Nicholas Hammond's phenomenal development as an actor. I will see you shortly. Hammond, who was just 5 feet 3 inches tall when filming began, was a real character. He had grown 6 inches, reaching 5 feet 9 inches by the time filming was over. An instantaneous aesthetic issue resulted from this profound physical change. The character of Friedrich was supposed to be younger than Charmian Karsliesel. Still, he was now much taller than her. Due to his rapid growth, Hammond had to have his outfit adjusted frequently, in addition to his height. The clothing department had a hard time keeping up, necessitating new ensembles on occasion. The production team came up with a number of ingenious solutions to hide the fact that Hammond's height was shifting. To keep Hammond's height in line with the rest of the cast, they first had to put big lifts in his shoes. They took these lifts down completely as filming went on, and he kept getting taller. Scenes involving Carr eventually required Hammond to stand barefoot. Carr, meantime, found herself increasingly using apple boxes as a prop to make herself look taller than her younger brother, who was growing up at a quick pace. The cameraman also made use of forced perspective and clever positioning, such as maintaining a safe distance between the performers and the set, to create the impression of accurate height relationships. First and foremost, the actors' lavatory needs were met in the woods. The filming settings were fairly rudimentary, but the alpine shots were excellent and set to music, causing the actors and crew to use some unconventional lavatory setups throughout the film. Salzburg has the 7th highest rainfall in Europe, which presented a number of obstacles for the production crew. Because of the weather's unpredictability, filming was often postponed, and crews had to wait under temporary shelters. The Austrian Alps were home to numerous filming sites that were inaccessible by road, needing the use of ox-drawn carts for the transportation of equipment as the cast and crew made their way on foot. They slept mostly in tents and tarps, with the rare treat of a barn as an extra amenity. The absence of adequate facilities, including bathrooms, in these isolated alpine areas was the most concerning aspect. These rudimentary circumstances, along with the cold weather, provided a striking contrast to the finished, polished result that viewers would see later. An awkward scenario arose for a big Hollywood production starring famous actors due to the lack of basic facilities. Cast members who were female found this situation particularly difficult. We ventured into the woods when the call of nature came, which was not an easy feat for us women, as Julie Andrews herself remembered openly. Amazingly, the film's flawless aesthetic stands in stark contrast to the reality of what goes on behind the scenes. No one would ever guess that Julie Andrews had just stepped out of a forest to use the loo when they saw her swirl elegantly across lush slopes.